better start moving along. I've got a great panel here. I've got John Burk to my left. And John, why don't you just say something really quick about what you do and something interesting that you think is coming up in 2018 with the world of live streaming.
Sure. My name is John Burk. I work for Roker Media. That's a company owned by Al Roker back in New York. I'm based in Los Angeles. Al Roker Entertainment does television shows. We've been doing them now since 1994. For TV, linear, digital, you name it. But also we jumped into live streaming about a year and a half or so ago with Roker Media. It's kind of a new startup division of the company. What do I think is going to be new? Well, I think really that the world of OTT and SVOD is just taking off like crazy. There's so many channels out there now that you just pop up and watch. And I think as far as live is concerned, it's going to be well, for us, it's gone from a destination to a tool. So before the company was focused on creating content specifically for the social platforms that was day and date based. For the most part, but we kind of have gotten away from that, and now it's just like an offering that the company does, basically in addition to all the other things that I mentioned at the top of my spiel. Okay,
Greg from DaCast, a streaming platform. Why don't you say a little bit about what you think is coming up in 2018?
Hi, I'm from DaCast. DaCast is an online video platform, works on a SaaS basis with a very strong pay-per-view element to it. So we have a lot of people who are doing pay-per-view. We are a small and medium market company for the most part up till now. What's coming up in 2018 is that OTT is now the expected thing. We're seeing in this year, we're seeing a rush of mid and large market independent media companies moving into OTT as just a standard part of their distribution. And we expect to see that continue because most of them have figured out the monetization question.
Very good. And then next to you, we have Renee, who is a Twitch streamer, a variety of streamer, actually multiple platforms. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what you do?
I'm Renee Reynosa. I'm a professional streamer, is what it says up there. I effectively play video games for a living on a platform called twitch.tv.
Yes.
So you can go ahead and just, you don't have to care about anything I have to say. It's just, I just play video games, that's all I do.
No, that's not true. And then Charles.
So I'm with New Lion. We operate an end-to-end platform that enables content owners to distribute and monetize their content. I think the biggest thing that we're going to see in 2018 is a continuation and even an acceleration of what we've already seen to date, where various content owners who previously didn't have the opportunity to reach viewers through digital or other traditional distribution means now have this wide open opportunity of OTT. And to echo what he said a moment ago, is that OTT is expected. And when you look at the opportunity out there for all the different content ranging from niche all the way up to mainstream broadcast and linear content, I think we're only going to see the OTT space grow, quite possibly even by a multiple of where it is now in the next 12 months.
Awesome. And then next to you, actually a guy I've known for years. Let me just introduce you this way, because I have another good friend that was at ESPN, and I wanted to know who the go-to guy was in social, and this was way back when, and it was Gabe Goodwin, and then he went to Fox Sports, also helped them do digital and social. So I'm pleased to also have Gabe on the panel here. You can say a little bit about yourself, but also what's new in 2018.
Well, I would say that the thing I'm looking forward to is these companies like ESPN, Fox Sports, and others producing, developing original for digital, whether it's live streaming or podcasts or short video, and then porting that back to TV. You know, so often the flow has been the other direction. Sort of the leftovers from TV make their way to digital, and I think we're seeing some of the best producers and most interesting talent start with digital and move their way up to TV in a different path than we've seen before. So I bet 18 will be a lot more of that.
Awesome. I also want to put a note out to the audience here that we've got a great panel, so you should be thinking about questions as we go, and we'll leave some time at the end. If you have something really urgent, you want to raise your hand and ask it, that's fine too. And I also then want to turn the panel to monetization. So I have just a couple of really brief slides. I'm going to tee up Renee first to talk a little bit about what you do, what your content brand is, and how people are making money in this space. This is Twitch. So first slide, just if you're not familiar with it, if you're a Twitch streamer, you can actually basically monetize your fans, your fan clubs in this subscription perspective. You also have opportunities there to make money on ads, and there's also something called tips or donations. This is, donation is not the right word, tips is the right word. This is a slide from Activate Tech talking about basically at the end of 2017, $100 million will be brought in this kind of tip format. And so, I mean, with that as an introduction to monetization, Renee, why don't you help us understand, and I'll just leave this one up there for people to look at, but what is it that, what's your brand, and talk to us about the Twitch community. A lot of people here are interested in learning a little bit more about it.
Sure. So Twitch came around in June of 2011. It's an extension of Justin TV, which was a live streaming platform that was largely just very weird and didn't have a lot of real content on it. Twitch came about as purely their gaming platform, and the idea behind it is anyone can be a streamer. You start up a channel, you start playing video games, you commentate, you do whatever you would want to do, and people either choose to watch and choose not to watch. It's a very competitive scene now. Back then, when I got around to it, it was in its infancy and it was a little bit different. The subscription model was actually not there immediately. The only way that you'd make money was based on ad revenue. So you would run ads on your stream every 15 minutes, every 30 seconds, however frequently you wanted to. I personally don't actually run any ads on my channel whatsoever, just because I like that to be the benefit of my broadcast. So the primary way that most people make money is through subscriptions. People can choose to pay $5, $20, or $10 a month, or $25 rather, to you. You get a portion of it, Twitch gets a portion of it. And when you do that, you get a host of different benefits. The benefits are created by the broadcaster, by me, or whoever you are as a channel owner. And yeah, that is the biggest way that people make money on
and
Twitch.
you mentioned to me that it used to be $4.99 a month, and then I noticed that you told me this too. They have these new tiers,
Right.
And that's relatively new.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very new thing. It was originally just $5 as a flat rate. That was how it was. But now, if you want to support your favorite streamer more, you can choose to pay $20 or $25 a month or $10 a month. You get the same amount of benefits. You don't get anything extra. You'll get like an extra. There's things called emotes on there. They're basically little emojis or stickers that you can use across the website. But as far as actual benefits, those are predetermined by the broadcaster themselves.
Right. I mean, this is going to date me, but I was a fan of Billy Joel growing up, and I remember it was like Root Beer Rag. It was the fan club.
Right.
And we paid money for it, and you got fun stuff. So.
Yeah, it's a very similar idea, but there are people making easily six figures on this model. There are people making gross amounts of money just basically from people spending $5 a month.
Yes.
Can I just mention something about Twitch also?
Yes.
So last year, Roker Media tried a show on Twitch. We actually incubated a show for about 2 months, and it was a cooking show, and it was a 2-hour-long live stream. And you think that's crazy to be that long, but the one thing that we found, the longer that the show went, the more engagement there was. And that's the thing that was really great about Twitch, was that the audience is hyper engaged. And these platforms I call talkback. They're kind of like the talkback kind of platforms. So you've got YouNow, Lively, and Twitch, where specifically that person like yourself has a really direct connection with the fan. So we found that the creator was making a lot of money off of doing this show, this cooking show from Brooklyn, where they would start actually with the recipe and they would publish that the day before. People would go out and shop for it. Then they would cook it together. And then at the end of the show, they would eat it together and they would talk about it. And he would be doing dabs and stuff like that. I learned about dabs last year for the first time, so I'm dating myself also. I had no idea. So anyway, I was very impressed with the engagement on the platform. It didn't pan out for us as far as bringing a sponsor, and I got to be honest with you. And that's tough, because with these talkback platforms, they're great for the creator, but they're really tough for the brand or the sponsor to come in.
Yeah, I mean, I personally stream. My show goes from anywhere minimum of 4 hours every day to up to 8 hours, sometimes 12 if I'm really enjoying a game. But typically, I'll stream for 4 to 6 hours straight, and that's typically allows me to have an engagement of about 45 minutes to an hour for most of my viewers. I think that's like the average on Twitch. I don't know what my actual stats are. I haven't looked at that number. But that is one of the biggest benefits of Twitch, is that we have an immediate interaction with our audience. So it keeps people engaged for a much longer duration of time.
So that's and we'll dive more into that. It's a very unique community and unique genre of content, I would say. I also want to get Charles' perspective though on this in terms of big picture, big content, UFC, right? You're doing a lot of work with big brands. And for them, it's of course very important to drive tune-in, to drive subscriptions. Tell us about UFC, your relationship there, what you're doing for them, and how they are monetizing live streaming.
Sure. So UFC TV is a destination that we support for their organization. There's two different business models inside of the experience. One is a monthly recurring subscription where they're monetizing their VOD library and exclusive live events that are available to these specific subscribers. And then separate and distinct from that, they've also got their tentpole events, their UFC 217, UFC 218, and those are available as a pay-per-view model. And then in addition to that, you've also got the ability to purchase at different levels, whether it be an SD broadcast, an HD broadcast, or even this weekend, we're going to be streaming their pay-per-view event in 4K. So there's a lot of different a lot of different opportunities inside of that experience to monetize the content in a couple of different ways. Those pay-per-views that you could buy now live at a fixed rate per card, depending upon where you live in the world, after a certain amount of time, they transition to the archive library, which would then be included in that monthly subscription. So the key there is they're looking to drive greater engagement with their fans, where it's not just people tuning in once a month to watch one fight card if they're lucky. What they're trying to do is create an instance where fans start to engage with the content on a much more regular basis, and thus create a longer-term relationship with that user and monetize them greater over a longer period of time.
Awesome. Gabe, you have spent a lot of time in this kind of debate over the last 8 years of selling TV, selling digital, producing for TV, producing for digital. You said something pretty interesting to me, I thought, which was, and I think it's useful advice, is you go in, when you produce digital, you're basically doing it kind of just like it's a linear. Talk to us a little bit about how you think, how you think big brands are sort of thinking about linear TV versus digital, how the two things are sort of interacting with each other, and where we're headed on that front.
Yeah, well, so similar production principles, right? You're trying to get an audience to care, and I think we're long gone are the days of just like throw it up there, give them the extras. People want something produced. Now that doesn't mean it has to have all the graphics and video and presentation of a TV broadcast. Oftentimes that's going to actually be bad for the live stream, but people want to know that the talent had a plan, that there was a reason that they tuned in, there was a value proposition. And so one of the things I think that's become more and more of an advantage, especially with some of the social live streaming platforms, is when you're a TV producer, you don't really find out what people thought of your show until a day or two later. And really until you dive into the minute-to-minute ratings, you don't know what worked and what didn't. You might think you do, but you really don't know until you see minute-to-minute ratings. And it kind of looks like this. In a live stream, on almost all these platforms, really within a few seconds if what you're talking about is working or not. So it'd be the equivalent of like if right now a bunch of you just got up and left, we would all agree I should stop talking now. Somebody else should begin talking, or this is not going to go very well. We're going to run out of people.
We appreciate you all staying.
If more and more people started hearing my voice and streaming in here, we'd say like, let them keep vamping, Gabe. Go, 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 go. And so the nice advantage over when you think like a TV producer but adapt it a little bit to a live streaming environment is when something works, stick with it.
Right.
When do things that are visual to attract more people, to keep them a little longer. That in real time.
Awesome. And so all of these platforms do have interaction. This is a critical component to how it works, and I think it's a useful thing to touch upon. Greg, you have some perspectives, and I think this will just be the kickoff to this discussion of what's this platform versus that platform. Talk to us a little bit about your experience with your clients. Where are they going, and what do you advise them in terms of which platform to do? Are you doing multi-streaming, et cetera? Tell us how you think about platforms in the context of your clients.
Well, I basically, what Gabe was saying is absolutely true, but what we do, we have a significant number of OTT customers, and on the other hand, we have a significant number of event-based customers. In terms of platforms, what has worked best for event-based customers and long-term customers, but event-based customers in particular, who need to make money, is to have a multi-platform strategy where they do promotional streaming. Sometimes it's very low bit rate, very low quality streaming on Facebook. And this is not Facebook Live. I'm talking about embedding the streams off of their whatever platform they're using, like us, onto Facebook. And then having click-throughs to the higher quality content and enhanced content that might be on their own websites. This has worked tremendously well for people ranging from Ultimate Frisbee, the club organizations, both at the national and international level, who have used us several times before they ended up a couple years ago off on the ESPN3. They would do a very low bit rate, low res stream on Facebook. They would heavily promote, and you would click through, and whereas they might get, for a 4-day championship, they might get 120,000, 150,000 unique viewers total. They would get 30 to 50% conversion to the paid side because of the enhanced content and enhanced benefits they had on their own platform off of Facebook.
Yep. And so I'm going to throw this to you, Gabe. You mentioned something, you're going to summarize it for me, but YouTube versus Facebook. You had this fascinating Lil Wayne, Skip Bayless A/B testing, right? Where, and forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, but Facebook, you're going to get a lot of people in the door, but they may not stay. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say anything that would be, bad about either of them, but what you're getting at is we had a live stream interview with a big name, Lil Wayne, one of our talent. This was at Fox Sports, and it was accessible on both Facebook and YouTube. And because of the way that we promoted it and because of the reach that we have and he had on Facebook, there was a whole lot of people coming in. On Facebook. But when we looked a month later at the data, what we saw was actually the people who were on YouTube were there longer, and a significantly larger number of people watched back the VOD on YouTube versus Facebook. So Facebook did an amazing job at reach, and in real time, people knew that our guy was talking to this big star, and that has a huge value for us. But when it came to just consumption and minutes and places where maybe potentially a brand could have been inserted, YouTube was actually doing a great deal more for us down the road.
Awesome. And Renee, you've got really good personal experience with this, right? And Twitch obviously is a special platform. You can explain that element of it, but then you also have done a little bit of trying some of these other things. How do you think about the different platforms, which you're going to use when and how?
Well, it's difficult for me because I'm contractually obligated to only stream on Twitch. I'm not actually allowed to stream on any other platform. It's per my contract. Some people have different contracts, and I could go and stream on Facebook or Microsoft also has Mixer. I could do those things, and Twitch isn't going to outright ban me because I have a good relationship with them, but it's not going to make them very happy. So I actually only stream on Twitch. And even if I could stream on the other platforms, I don't know if I would because I don't have an audience on any of those platforms. I do have a YouTube channel, and I do upload videos on that of my Twitch streams, but I don't actually stream on YouTube. That's entirely my own personal preference. I'm not a fan of the YouTube platform personally.
Gotcha.
I like the Twitch platform. I like the interactivity. I like the community there. So for me, it's a bit different.
Very good. John, you had some ideas about this one too, I think.
Yeah, I think that she kind of nailed it as far as the platforms and the allegiance people actually have with platforms and the audience. Once you have an audience established, it's really tough to move over to another platform. And I saw that personally with Al Roker when the Hurricanes were down in Texas, and he was going down there to broadcast. And like basically just driving down, he would go live on usually on Facebook, and I told him, I said, your audience is actually on Twitter, so you kind of need to be going on Periscope instead, and he got way more amplification, way larger audience there than he would on Facebook. So yeah, for us, it was always where there was an established audience. So we would work with publishers. We'll call them publishers, for lack of a better term, but basically, wherever there was a branded entity, whether that was actually a publisher like a Digiday or Little Things or Hoopla or something like that, that actually had a page with for me, the benchmark was always 2 million, right? So that was the follower, the number that I like to see in order to even begin a conversation with the brand. So that's where we would try to park that content. That destination content. And it was always hard. It was always tough because we were a little early on it.
Yep.
And it was too shiny and new for everybody,
right.
For all these brands, and especially for agencies, because there was no real ROI yet.
So, and this actually, I'm going to leave it on you, right? The big picture, how do you monetize? You talked a little bit on the call, and I think you could deliver this message to this audience is, okay, you've been live streaming for a few years, show me the money, right? What do you say if folks are like, yeah, I'm ready to make some money?
Well,
Turn on the camera.
Sure, yeah, because there's not a week that goes by where there's not a call, there's not a pitch to us about the fact that, hey, I'm a podcaster, I do this, I do that, or something like that, and I'd be great in live. I'm like, okay, let me look at your numbers, let me look at your socials.
Yep. That's
the first place that we go to is looking at that. And that's not always the benchmark, by the way. They also have to be a very compelling person with an interesting story to tell, right? So that's as important as well. But then, where do we put it? All right, and then we start to think of, okay, what's the partner that would want to work with this person and do it because of those two things, the way that that person's presenting themselves, the content that they have, as well as their audiences. So what do you do? What is the way for us to make dough in this space? Well, for us, we are traditional TV people, and we have gone back and we have created shows with really good quality productions with full-on directors, producers, and stuff like that for live, and then have taken that to pitch to brands. And that's where it gets tough, right? Because we still don't have those large audiences yet with live streaming on the social platforms that they're used to seeing within the TV world. So there's no easy answer there.
Okay, but I do have good news, and this is from Charles, the World Surf League, and this is a great example of a brand that's not a mega brand and yet has a viable ad-based model using on-demand live streaming. Talk to us about that, and also I think the global nature of it may help as well.
Yep, absolutely. So World Surf League, WSL, as we like to call it, is a brand that I like to refer to it as a brand that not a lot of people know about unless you're within the surfing community, whether you actually surf or you're a fan of the competition. But it is an extraordinarily popular brand globally, particularly the west coast of the U.S., Hawaii, Brazil, Australia, all the places you would expect, but even a lot of places you wouldn't expect, like Europe. And their business model is their fans demand that the content be free. They've said to us 1,000 times that if they did not offer a free-to-consume model, live content, that their users would almost certainly revolt. So we support a service for them whereby they do all of their monetization through advertising, whether it's pre-roll, mid-roll, and when you think about the course of their event, I mean, they could have a 10-day event where it's 8 to 10 hours in the water with a lot of downtime, so it's not like we're dealing with a linear broadcast feed where we've got Scuddy Tone and we could just pop an advertisement, and we've got people that are actually monitoring that content and working between WSL and us, where we're actually injecting ads and doing some different things with ad placement. But also because of the globally diverse user base that they have, at least half their audience is sleeping when the live event's taking place. So if they're in Fiji, Europe is sleeping. So what we actually do in that case is once the event concludes, we actually re-engage it and simulate the live event. So it's technically an archive in the sense that it's no longer live, but we've completely replicate that full live experience for the next batch of users that are coming in from a different region of the world, recreate that same advertising-based experience, but have the ability to target those ads based upon where they are geographically or where they are in terms of different tags or whatnot. So the key here is even though a lot of people don't know the brand WSL, a lot of people do, and they've managed to create a very, very strong business model, and it's pure advertising.
Yeah. Gabe, to you, one of the interesting things we talked about on the call and also at lunch, and I think you've identified a little bit of a shift in attitude where you have these massive budgets, linear TV, big brands, they want to be on linear TV, and talking about digital in a meeting is sort of like banishing them to the basement, you mentioned to me, right? And you've seen, though, a little bit of a shift in that and a little more equilibrium.
I'll leave out names so I don't get anyone in trouble. But
No,
just yesterday, pitching a show concept, I got a network, a talent, and some agents in the room, and somebody says this thing that would have made a silence come over the room a few years back was, well, all right, so what if we did this weekly and digital, and then we did a monthly TV show with it? That was sort of the notion that someone threw out there. And talent immediately was like, yeah, I'm in. That's cool. Let's do it. And a few years ago, that would have been seen as like, oh God, so you think I got to go to the minors before I can play at this level? And it's just genuinely not that way any longer, which is good, because I think most people realize they've built an audience in social and digital. They'll get an audience in social and digital. They don't have to be on TV to feel like they've reached their maximum audience.
And Brian, if I can add to that also, about a week or so ago, we had executives come out from New York to do a bunch of pitch meetings. And it's not the usual channels that in the old days we would pitch to all the major networks. We would pitch also to the major companies out there, the cable companies, broadcasters. Now it's of course to the streaming video services, the Amazons, the Netflix, the Hulus, and stuff like that. And really to watch the sea change of the way the executives there that we're actually pitching to, it kind of mirrors exactly what you're saying in the fact that they want us to lead with the digital now. Not just come in there with a TV show pitch, right? But actually have the full-on package. To your point earlier about it's multi-platform. So to go back to the original question, there's a show that we did back in the springtime on TLC, a linear time buy. It was actually a branded time buy, the show. But for us to bring in the sponsors for that show, which we brought in some major sponsors, one of them was Staples, millions of dollars that they paid for this. The job that I had, the only job that I had on that show was actually to deliver the impressions. So that got sliced and diced through the linear side, but more on the digital side. So it was across all of the platforms from Instagram to Facebook to Twitter, and also live streaming. And we saw the best success actually with Instagram, to be honest with you, as far as impressions are concerned. So as part of my job for that, it was making that mix of all those things, like I said before, live to us as a tool. And we had to include that as like part of our package.
Greg, there are folks here today, and I know throughout the streaming media community that are maybe, let's say, not big tier content creators. It might be educators, it might be religious broadcasters, it might be people worried about recovery efforts for the hurricane. So talk to us a little bit about some of your clients, whether it was the Pope visit, Hurricane Maria, WAPA TV. Give us a good case study of how do we make money if we're not a big player doing UFC, et cetera.
Well, I mean, obviously the OTT side, people are essentially making money the same way they've been making it on linear. For example, WAPA TV, a Puerto Rican TV station, had lost their linear broadcast, their over-the-air broadcasting during the hurricanes, and saw a significant chunk of their entire audience move on to their live stream. And because they had the monetization applied in their standard, they were able to keep the revenue up, keep affording it, and keep it moving. They saw a massive increase, something on the order of 150 times increase in both their online viewership and their overall revenue stream from that. Now that's a traditional OTT linear type of stream. Let's talk about an odd small production, event production type of opportunity. Pope's visit to Ecuador a few years back was broadcast on live streaming for every minute from the plane touchdown until the plane liftoff. It lasted about 3 days. It was pay-per-view. It had around 38,000 unique viewers on the paid stream. This paid stream was given as a fundraiser for the local church and local church charities. It also happened to pay for the streaming production. So it did double duty, and they ended up clearing quite a bit for the local church. They also had about 100,000 other unique viewers on the clip service that they did through social media, where they would show highlights of the presentation. The clip service drove the pay-per-view.
Nice. So this is actually, you've played into my secret master plan. I've been following social clipping for a long, long time. You guys are probably familiar with Snappy TV or Whip Clip. You've probably heard me pitch you personally on clipping. And what I love about a year and a half ago is that the business to consumer, the idea of consumers clipping content first came to reality. There was a tiny company called Oddshot that you may know, and then Twitch put it in the player. So there is an active consumer clipping community now, and that's a tee up for you, Renee, to talk about that and how that's kind of helped you and helps your audience engage. Tell us a little bit about how people are using that as they enjoy and watch.
Yeah, the great thing about clipping is that one of the big things with streaming, when you're streaming for 4 or 5 or 6 hours, is that obviously it's not 6 hours of like awesome stuff going on. It's usually just normal, whatever, and then something really exciting will happen, and you want to showcase that. You want to showcase something awesome happening in the game, or something funny happens to me, or something, whatever it is. So the best thing about clip is something will happen. I can just tell my chat, hey, chat, clip it for me. Just clip it. They'll do that. They literally press a button and they get a link and they can post in the chat. And then I have a whole like database of every clip that anyone has ever made. I can then put that, just immediately post it to Twitter. People can see it there and they'll be like, oh, that was really funny. I should tune into her channel because that's an interesting thing that happened. I can also use it to make videos. I can use it in a lot of different ways. It's a really great tool.
And then,
sorry, I was just going to say again. It's just the interactivity and just the immediacy of the nature of clips.
Gabe, do you have anything to add on the
Yeah, well,
clipping?
just quickly, I mean, this has become the strategy for the couple of networks I've worked closest with. You talk about social, like we make these shows, we spend a couple hours a morning talking about sports, and the whole strategy for social is to be clipping in real time and basically being that guy with the sandwich board on the corner saying, like, go buy lunch over here. That's really the philosophy that we've had for years now. You also do make money on it if you have those clips deals in place, so that's an upside. But mainly it's to be relevant in the place where potential audience is hanging out, which is oftentimes Twitter and Facebook. So, I mean, I think more and more shows are being built with sort of short, smart, shareable as a foundation for what they're trying to put out. That the long conversation is great, but yeah, it's those bites that get shared that they're really building towards.
And
If I could add something to that.
Yeah, please.
What we see with our content owners is that they're actually clipping in real time, distributing via social, and then trying to convert those users back into a paid user, and doing this all in real time. So whether it's one of like let's say a minor hockey league, they've got somebody that will then pull a clip out of the game, put it to social, look at this goal, drive traffic to the game, and trying to get them to buy a game or buy a season pass. All of that utilizing these clips. And the key there is it has to be in real time because you've only got that finite window where that content is truly live.
Yep. And a little segue from there here to the topic for you also, Charles, of churn, which is a major problem with OTT subscription platforms because it's so easy to quit the service, unlike TV where you have to return your set top or what have you. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing to combat churn and specifically around personalization. I thought this was interesting. Fighting is not fighting. There's different forms. Take us through that.
So there's a couple of steps that we take to help our content partners minimize churn, which as you rightly point out, is basically the biggest problem you deal with in a subscription model. One of those things is driving relevant content for users. So for instance, we'll provide an entire personalization engine so that users of a subscription service can actually build a profile of their likes and dislikes. And in the case of the UFC, the example would be, everybody thinks that you just get into the octagon and fight. But there's a lot of different disciplines within it. It could be grappling, it could be wrestling, it could be striking, it could be a variety of different types. You could follow particular athletes. So what we do is enable users to create that profile where they could pick their favorite athletes, pick their favorite fighting styles, and all of that's interchangeable to a variety of different services. Fighters could become actors, grappling could become documentaries, so it runs across the board. And what we then do is we take that information that the user has provided, and when they're looking through the library or they're consuming content, we're utilizing that for highly personalized recommendations to drive engagement. Because what it all comes down to is if the user is engaging with the platform, they're engaging with the content, they're going to see value. If they see value, they're not going to churn. Something else that we do is we make sure that our content partners have actionable information about how they can reduce churn. And what I mean by that is we provide our content partners with tools that enable them to segment their market and identify high-risk candidates for churn. For instance, hypothetically speaking, you may have a subscription service that has a 7-day free trial. But utilizing these analytics tools, we've identified that by the third day, if that user hasn't watched 5 hours of content or consumed content on at least 2 different devices, statistically there's an 80% chance they're going to churn. So now, by having this analytics, but also the users that compile these specific categories, you can now do highly targeted marketing, whether it's a push notification, email, or something else that's going to make sure they're aware of different devices, aware of different content. Basically, anything you could do to tailor a specific message to those users in order to take that churn likelihood down significantly.
Awesome. So audience questions. Let's see a show of hands. We have a couple of questions so far. Neil.
Yeah, so question for Charles on the WSL. So it's great if you're making money. We see a lot of kind of niche content providers grabbing a hold of going to UTC, whether it's live or bot, so that's exciting. But for their kind of content where it's hours on end, are they seeing large concurrent audiences? And when they're making money with mid-roll advertising, is that through a direct sales force?
So in terms of their concurrence, I'm a little ashamed to admit this, but when we first engaged with them, I didn't truly understand how big their audience was. And as we saw these events and we saw their concurrence, I was extremely impressed with the number of concurrence that they had. And not just peak concurrence for a 5-minute window or during the final heat. Their fan base is extremely loyal and they're extremely engaged. So they have high numbers for long durations. And that's one of the reasons why they have the ad inventory that supports their business. Now, I also say that they have high numbers, but it's relative. Unfortunately, I can't quote specifics because it's their info, but obviously it's relative to other brands and other content. And the key with them in particular is that they prove to me that you don't need to be a global tier 1 mainstream, every household in the world knows your brand to have an ad-supported model. Because I would say that probably a third of the people in this room probably aren't even familiar with them as an organization, let alone watch their content, and they have an extraordinary business on an ad-supported model.
I want to take more questions, so I'll get your question as well. But Renee, I want to go back to you for one thing that I've sort of skipped over, which is a little bit more about your content, the way you interact with the audience, what the audience likes. We talked about the real-time interaction and things like that. And if you want to weave into it also this idea of authenticity, of it's a real video game centric. I think that's roughly, it's a whole culture happening here on Twitch. Talk to us a little bit about how you sit down, you're ready to stream. Like, how do you think about going about the programming element, the content element of your day?
Well, the really unique thing about Twitch is that it is based on authenticity. It's really based on people are tuning in to me because they like me or they like my content or they like whatever game I'm playing. It's a lot different from all these other models because these aren't. It's not a show that I'm writing a script for where I have actors and we're doing a whole actual thing. It's very candid. It's very unique and it's very new. I don't really wake up in the morning. I'm like, okay, cool. Today I'm gonna act this way and I'm gonna do it this time. And here's my time slots. It's much more just, all right, I'm gonna play this game and I hope people like it. And if they don't like it, then I'm not playing that game again. And if they love it, I'll keep playing that game.
But like, for example, like a new game, would that be an example? Like a new game comes out, that could be
right. Like the new Call of Duty just came out today, so I'm very excited to go back home and play that because I have a massive audience who really enjoys Call of Duty, who really enjoys shooters. So today is a really optimal time to play that game. In a month from now, it will not be a great time to play that game.
Right, and in a sense, you're all. And by the way, I'm sorry to take you away from that, but like you're all kind of discovering the new thing at the same time.
Yeah, and different things work for different people. I'm a variety broadcaster, so people like to watch me play a lot of different games. If I just stayed on one game every single day, people would lose interest because they don't want to see me play the same game. They want to see my reactions to as many different things as possible. So I just do that, and it's very trial and error. Some days I have very low concurrent viewers, and some days I have very high concurrent viewers. Some days one of the really interesting things that I didn't mention to you on the phone was on days when I have very low concurrent viewership, I actually notice a higher amount of people subscribing and actually or tipping and actually getting into the subscription model of it. On days when I have high concurrence, I don't see nearly as much conversion there, which is interesting. I really haven't figured out why that is yet. I've mentioned it to a lot of other broadcasters. I've talked to Twitch directly, and they have noticed the same thing, and none of us have yet to figure out why that is.
That's fascinating. You had a question.
I do, and Renee, this is another question for you about what you're doing at Twitch. In fact, Streaming Media Magazine's November issue has a cover story about Twitch and how they're influencing media. Since you're the next generation of broadcasters coming up, what is the most important thing that the media companies that are sitting in this room would think about when they're monetizing? Because a lot of people are thinking, I can do this, I can do that, but you really have kind of a great playground for looking at what works. So what advice do you give them?
Well, something that was mentioned earlier was the requirement for overproduction isn't there anymore. You don't really need to make these super expensive, high quality things. People need to, like you said earlier, people need to know they're tuning in for something. Something needs to be planned, but it doesn't necessarily need to be this like top tier Hollywood content. It can be very candid. It can be very casual, and I think that's what the biggest draw for Twitch is that it's just everyday folks playing games.
Right. You know, I would say too, I'll just add good to see you, by the way. I'll add something that I think is interesting, and we talked about this, Gabe, that it's not just live streaming in the way that Twitch is doing where you're streaming for 4 hours. There's also, I think, a movement towards more just authentic, quick takes. So for example, even, and I told people I did this on a B2B context, where I was at a conference, I step aside for 10 minutes, I rehearse like a 60-second demo of what they just gave as their technology. And that is a real-time clip. I mean, the conference is a day, so I've got it well within the time frame that people are searching and looking for content. But, and this, I'm not going to hold an audience for, I don't know, hopefully at least 45 minutes. But the 60-second clip was sort of loaded in, and it's sort of like auto plays. And so it's like, it's a VOD clip, but it's happening kind of in real time. And I feel like the live streamers and what you just said about the authentic, just get online and do it, is actually contributing to sort of two of these new genres, one being the 4-hour streams, the other being just the quick takes here and there, which I'm seeing a lot more of. Any other questions that I can take from the audience?
There's one for Charles, I guess. Most of you guys have advertising supported models, except when you look at DRM. Around the flight, for example, I guess New Line was kind of part of the DRM solution there. Without, I guess, revealing what all the problems were, any lessons learned that could be gleaned for this audience in terms of maybe the do's and don'ts?
I think we're talking about pirated, right? The Mayweather,
Mayweather fight.
And it was heavily pirated, yes?
Yes, but also, I guess, part of there was a big failure of the DRM when people were trying to get into the UFC. I think, right?
So there were, I forget how many, but there were a number of digital distribution outlets that, including Showtime and the UFC .tv experience that we powered. There were some issues with a few different providers as they were delivering it. We did have a hiccup with it. It wasn't related to DRM. Actually, it was quite the opposite. It wasn't a platform or a technology thing. We had a human error on a configuration that caused some users to not be able to get in, at least not initially. So in terms of the DRM, that DRM didn't play a role in, at least not for us. I don't know if it applied for anybody else, but I know that there were a variety of distributors that day that had issues. But in terms of our specific instance, it wasn't technology related. It really was a human error on configuring a timeout.
Awesome. Any other questions? We'll take one more. If not, I would love a big hand for my great panel.